Thank you.
In less than 20 years, a sport that has always been one of America's favorite pastimes has grown to become a full-time profession for many bass fishermen. The Bass Angler Sportsman Society Tournament Trail has not only changed the way America fishes, it's created a new lifestyle for fishermen who select bass angling as a profession, and added a new dimension in sports for those who follow the careers of these professional fishermen. It's bred a new spectator interest, not only for the dedicated bass fishing fan, but also for thousands and thousands of youngsters who daydream more of fishing heroes than those who swing bats and golf clubs for a living. Today and next Sunday, the Bassmasters will bring you an in-depth look at bass fishing as a profession and what it takes to fish for a living. It all takes place at the $137,000 Bassmaster Georgia Invitational Tournament at West Point Lake. A tournament absolutely full of surprises and tremendous catches, big bass, and the disappointment in not winning. But more importantly, how losing is handled by a young 24-year-old angler who, while still in high school, chose bass angling as his lifelong career. It's the best of the Bassmasters. I'm Ray Scott. You stay tuned and we'll be right back from LaGrange, Georgia.
West Point Lake on the Alabama-Georgia border. Third stop on this season's $2 million Bassmaster Tournament Trail. The Cast for Cash Angling Tour that earns the top 35 bass anglers the right to compete in the World Championship of Professional Bass Angling, the Bassmasters Classic. The worst conditions bass fishermen can face include cold, muddy water, a cold front, and falling water levels. The 290 bass anglers practicing here for this tournament are facing all these conditions. Prior to the cutoff period when anglers were allowed to fish the lake, heavy rains brought the water up into the shoreline grass. And this is where most of the anglers pre-fishing the lake found the bass. Then, the air temperature was in the 80s. Now, it's in the 40s and 50s. The water temperature is dropping. And to make conditions even tougher, the Corps of Engineers is now lowering the 27,000-acre impoundment to its winter pool. As the water level drops, it leaves much of the shoreline grass out of the water and scatters the bass who lived in the vegetation to different areas. To make things even tougher, there's a 16-inch size limit on these West Point bass, and another cold front is approaching. The contestants are allowed 3 days practice before the actual 3-day tournament begins. It's during this time the fishermen try to locate the bass they hopefully will catch and weigh in during the competition. These Bassmasters not only search for the bass during the practice period, but they attempt to put together a fish-catching pattern that will help write their game plan for the tournament. One angler practicing for the Georgia Invitational is 24-year-old Randy Blockett from Missouri. Randy, a touring pro on the Bassmaster Tournament Trail, was the youngest angler to qualify for the 1986 Bassmasters Classic World Finals. On this practice day, Randy explains what he's trying to accomplish.
Randy, when you come to a strange lake like this in a tournament on the practice days, exactly what are you looking for? Are you looking to find fish or to find areas or, of course, find fish? But, I mean, what exactly are you looking for?
Well, what I look for when I go to a tournament is I try to establish a confidence area. And that's a place that's an area big enough where you can spin the tournament at. In other words, it's a place where there's enough cover and there's enough water, whether it be deep water or just a big flat where there's enough area to hold a large concentration of fish where you can spend 3 days on. Because the BASS tournaments, our tournaments are 3 days long, plus 3 days of practice, and you've got to have a lot of area in order to spend 3 days in productive water.
Sure do. What about, you also try to find a secondary area in case weather turns bad on you?
Right. Weather, it's always an equalizing factor in these tournaments we fish, and I can't even remember a tournament that I fished in BASS that we've had stable weather for 6 days. And, usually there's always some fish biting shallow, but just in case, it's good to have some type of a deep water pattern. When I mean deep, I mean anywhere from 8 feet down, where you can fish in case there's a radical weather change.
Because those shallow fish are going to leave that area, aren't they?
Right. And wind is another factor that has really cost a lot of people a lot of money in these tournaments, because they'll find fish in practice where the wind is critical, whether it be a strong wind coming in on a bank and it's making the fish move in there, or whether it's no wind where you're fishing a topwater bait and the presentation is crucial. Like at Rayburn last year, the first day of practice at Rayburn, we had very little wind, which was unusual at that time of year, and I caught the biggest string of fish I've ever caught in my life the first day of practice. I caught 7 that would have weighed close to 30 pounds on topwater. And the first day of the tournament, the wind switched 360 degrees and started blowing into my banks that were normally calm. And therefore, I didn't have a backup pattern, and I had to go out the tournament morning and start cold. So, you've got to take into consideration all possible weather that will come in.
What does it take to become a professional bass angler? Stay tuned for some first-hand advice and a look at what happens when the top-seeded contestant finds things have changed. The Bassmasters will be right back from West Point Lake. The last practice day. Gloomy, light rain, and a bad forecast for tomorrow, the first day of the $137,500 Georgia Invitational. But these Bassmasters are here to compete, and they work to pick the winning combination. The sport of professional bass angling attracts fishermen from many walks of life, like Georgia's Tommy Mike, who holds a master's degree in fisheries biology from Auburn University. Roland Martin, a high school math teacher. Ken Cook, a fisheries biologist. And Rick Clunn, a computer programmer. But it's unusual to find a pro on the circuit who prepared himself academically for another vocation, even though he planned to fish for a living in the first place. There's a reason.
Randy, your education, you didn't major in fishing, did you?
No, I was a criminal justice major.
Criminal justice. How in the world did you end up out here?
Well, this is something, like I said, that hasn't happened overnight. It's something that I've been working for ever since I can remember. I mean, actually, ever since I can remember. I remember when I was a kid, I'd go down and fish at this little creek by our house, every day after school. And all my friends and parents say I'd outgrow it. I'd quit being so interested in fishing. And it just got worse and worse, the years went by. And so, it's something that I just didn't wake up one morning and decided I wanted to do. I've always loved to fish and loved the outdoors.
Well, had you pretty much planned when you were in college, even though you were majoring in criminal justice, going into fishing?
Yeah, by the time I was in college, I'd already planned, exactly what I wanted to do for the next, 5 to 10 years. But there were several variables that really stopped me from going into it at my college, at the college level. I can remember I was, starting reading Bassmaster when I was in grade school, and my interest grew in the tournament trail, all throughout my grade school and high school years, to the point that about, I think, my sophomore year in high school, I knew I wanted it. And, there are a lot of guys say they want it, but, I wanted it to the point where, I was almost obsessed with it. Instead of going out on dates or to proms in high school, I had my boat in the parking lot of high school and was at the lake every weekend. And, I was working part-time, going to school to finance my habit of fishing, and have just always been fanatical about it. And you know, that's what you have to be in, you know, in today's competitive world of the tournament fishing. You just got to totally dedicate yourself to wanting it.
Well, you used to bowl quite a bit too, didn't you?
Yeah,
professionally, didn't you?
Well, when I was in high school, especially in the wintertime, I was bowling in 4 or 5 leagues a week, and at one point I was averaging, you know, a 205 average in several of the leagues. But then again, at that same period, my interest in fishing and tournament fishing was growing, and I had to give up one or the other. And it was bowling that I gave up, and I haven't bowled in 5 or 6 years. But at one point, you know, I did consider that as a profession.
Well, where does it go from here? I mean, you actually, your first year on the circuit, you qualified for the Classic as the youngest person last year at the Classic. You know, where does it go from here?
Well, you know, hopefully, my goal is just to finish higher and higher in Angler of the Year every year. And it's a really tough goal because, I mean, fishing is getting so popular with all the media attention it's attracting, and you're getting a better caliber fisherman every year. I've talked to a lot of the top pros about this, and they said that 5 or 10 years ago, you still had your top echelon of fishermen, but the overall quality of the fishermen wasn't what it is today. You've got 300 guys in each one of these tournaments, and any one of them has a chance of winning the tournament. And it's not so much to be mechanically good as it was 5 or 6 years ago. You have to be a master of mechanics, not a master, but very knowledgeable in fish habitats, and you have to have the desire to want it.
The first competition day of the Georgia Invitational, damp and foggy. And for many of these Bassmasters, it'll be a tough day. Double tough as they try to figure out the bass as the weather worsens. To make it more difficult, the majority of the bass seem to hole up in small, specific areas which draw a crowd of fishermen. Although there are fish being caught, many are not making the minimum 16-inch size limit on this lake, and those caught under that size don't count. But as in every BASS tournament, someone always finds the bass and catches them. Stay tuned as the first day weigh-in sets an extraordinary mark for big bass limits. Tommy Mike, who has a full-time guiding business on this lake, placed second in the last BASS tournament here. He's considered by many as the best of the best at catching West Point bass. Even though historically local anglers do not usually fare as well as seasoned tournament pros, there's strong talk before this tournament starts that Tommy Mike will win it. But not everything goes to plan.
Normally this time of year, this fish will be bunched up and concentrated, and when you find them, you just catch one right after the other, right after the other. And all this rain came in, and the water rose, and all this new grass was covered up. And then we had 70-degree weather, and a combination of that and clouds and just very unstable weather and unstable water has just scattered these fish. And normally in November and December, they'll bunch up, and you can just catch a whole lot of them in one spot, 2 places. Today, it looks like fish are just scattered. One hits here, one hits over here. You can't seem to catch a whole bunch of them in one spot. Hopefully, we're going to find some bunched up somewhere today. If not today, tomorrow, maybe when the weather changes and it gets colder, maybe they'll bunch up a little tighter.
Tommy Mike didn't figure out the fish-catching combination this first day, but others did. In a river impoundment like West Point, a lake with a reputation for not only big fish, but also big bass that school up in deep water, anything can happen. And it does, as local Bassmaster Mike Johnson comes to the scales with his 7 bass tournament limit, a limit that fills his weigh-in bag.
Mike Johnson is coming in here. Mike has even bigger string of bass. Woo, this looks like the days of Eufaula. Y'all ever heard of Eufaula? That's back in the dark ages, down the river. All right. We'll weigh him. All right, now this is Orlando Wilson's partner, Mike Johnson. Mike, how you feel?
Wet and cold.
Man, you don't feel nothing. Tell the truth.
Excited.
Excited. This your first tournament with me?
Yes.
All right, step up here close and watch the scale, son. You done done a number.
33 pounds.
33 pounds, 13 ounces. Man, that's doing it. Look at that guy right there. Now, we're going to weigh. He's got one humongous bass in here. We're going to weigh this big bass first. Let him take the big bass. Get the two biggest bass out of there. Is that the biggest one? All right, here's Big Mama. Get the other one, too. Hold the other one up, too. Look at these fish, folks. Hold that one up, too, Mike. Now, smile like a mule eating briars. Look over here. Boy, that is fantastic. Now, let's weigh them in there. Now, weigh them both. Put the biggest one in first. I would do that, Harold, one at a time. I'm not going two at a time. We're waiting for a big one. All right, here's the big one right here, or one of the big ones. We'll weigh them both. One bass weighs 10 pounds, 3 ounces. All right. Here's a 10-3 right here. Now, lay the other in there. Let's see what she weighs. 10 pounds, 3 for the big one, and the second is 7 pounds, 7 ounces. Man, that is wonderful. That's the largest bunch of fish we've caught, and I cannot tell you how long. Right here on dear old West Point. Now, every one of these fish are alive, and we'll put them all right back in the lake and hope we catch them tomorrow, huh? One more good hand for Mike Johnson, folks. Fantastic catch. That's got to be a record for this lake in our tournament history. Now, who's going to be a lucky man to follow this act?
As the first day weigh-in progresses under dripping skies, it's apparent that more than one Bassmaster has found the key to catching these West Point bass.
Another big, tremendous bunch of fish. Randy, you ought to be proud of them, son.
Ooh, I'll tell you what, Roy, those are Jesus' fish there. You don't get a bite till 1 o'clock.
You did not have a bite till 1 o'clock.
That's right.
All right, you did. I would love to be with you those last 2 hours. Watch the scales, folks. 25 pounds, 4 ounces. Let's give a good hand.
Other anglers who fish the same general area in the lower lake as Mike Johnson and Randy Behringer also do well this first day. But it's one particular spot where the action is hottest. A bay with deep water structure and clear water. The clearest water in West Point Lake. How good is this honey hole? More than 100 pounds of bass were bagged here today. While winning is important in any sport, the points earned for pounds and ounces of bass caught in a BASS tournament are almost as important as money to these professional anglers. Because it's the points that qualify these fishermen for the prestigious Bassmasters Classic, the World Championship of Professional Bass Angling. And it's these important points, the pounds and ounces of bass, that shape the game plan for the second day's efforts.
Probably what we're talking about is just that you can bust a big bag of fish in one day here. You can catch a 30-pound bag of fish, which you were talking about earlier. You can make the Classic in one day at this tournament. The guy that caught the 33 pounds a day doesn't have to fish for the rest of the tournament. He's in the top 10. So the problem we all have is that you can throw a spinnerbait on the bank like 95, when you say 90, 95% of the people are doing. Or you can go out there and gamble and try to catch the big stringer.
If he catches that big string again tomorrow, he's ahead of us already.
Well, the thing you have to look at is the tournaments we have ahead of us. I mean, we've got 2 days at the Super Invitational. We've got a 5-fish limit at Sam Rayburn. And this is really our only good chance to go out and knock a 25-pound stringer off. It's done on a regular basis. I mean, you can do it on other lakes, but they do it on this like every day. And you've got to be in a place that you have the potential to catch 25 pounds at.
I'll tell you what's important, though, is at least getting 15 pounds of fish and not spending 3 days like you're not getting anything, which can very easily happen. Well, you know what I'm saying? You gotta, it's a gamble either way you do it. But I think that, it's like you're gonna sit out there all day, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think you're gonna go inside. I don't have the guts to do that.
Well, I'm in this position, I've got to come out of here with 30 pounds of fish. And I need to fish a place that has a concentration of fish where you have the odds are more in your favor of getting a large string where the concentrations are. You can go out and beat the banks and you might get an individual fish that will be, 7 or 8 pounds, but the chances of getting enough to accumulate 30 pounds are slim.
How many pounds you got going into this one?
About 36, 37.
Yeah, you do need to catch a good stringer.
And
This one. I mean, all of us do.
Hello?
Good morning, this is your wake-up call. It's 4:30.
Thank you.
Day 2 of the Bassmasters Georgia Invitational. And things will change, including the weather and the catching. Right now, it's time for the Pros Pointers, the how-to section of the Bassmasters.
You know, a lot of people overlook the importance of fishing line in today's fishing, but anglers on the Bassmaster Tournament Trail realize how important it can be. And there are several tips that I'd like to give you that'll help you get better performance out of your line. First of all, is when you're spooling your line on, take a towel and wet it down a little bit and hold the line in front of the reel like this when you're spooling the line on. Because what this will do, it'll remove all the chalk and polymers that are collected on your line when it's made at the factory. It'll allow your line to come off the reel a lot better and a lot more quieter. If you've ever noticed, if you don't do this, when you first put new line on, it sounds sort of squeaky and chalky. Another tip that we use is the proper way to put line on, that is. If you just lay it flat on the ground, a spool, such as this right here, and you try to spool line on, your line will go on your reel in coils. So the best way to do it is to hold your line spool the way that it's going to come off to come on the same way on your reel. And when you do this, the line will lay flat on your reel and will come off really smooth. But it's really important to do this. You'll get better performance out of your line. And just remember, when you're fishing heavy cover, such as rocks and brush, you need to change your line more often because it's the only link between you and a fish.
This first day's weigh-in set the stage for one of the closest shootouts we've had in a Bassmaster tournament in a long, long time. Next week, you'll see the exciting conclusion of the $137,000 Georgia Invitational and learn what the pros do when the going gets tough, how they solve the bassing puzzle when their honey holes run dry. And you'll also see how a real young Bassmaster handles the pressure when things don't go just right. Don't miss it. For the Bassmasters, this is Ray Scott, and we'll see you next week.
The Bassmasters has been brought to you by the Heartbeat of America, today's Chevy trucks. Raise your boat. We...
Georgia-Alabama border. Today, you'll witness the final 2 rounds of the $137,000 Bassmaster Georgia Invitational. We watched last week as local angler Mike Johnson, a rookie pro, weighed in a tremendous catch of almost 34 pounds of bass, anchored by a giant 10-pound, 3-ounce largemouth. That first day weigh-in set the stage for one of the most unusual finishes in Bassmaster tournament history. A boat-to-boat, face-to-face showdown where know-how makes a $26,000 difference between first and second place. Today, you'll also see how one young Bassmaster handles the pressure of professional bass angling. With an attitude we can all learn a lesson from. I'm Ray Scott. Stay tuned. The Bassmasters will be right back on West Point Lakes.
For the 290 Bassmasters heading out on this 27,000-acre lake this morning, yesterday's weigh-in proved to be a frustrating experience. Not only did the majority of these contestants not catch a legal 16-inch bass, they must now cope with the fact that some contestants are on the bass in a big way, such as tournament leader Mike Johnson's 7-bass limit and near 34 pounds, and runner-up Randy Behringer of Texas with over 25 pounds in the last 2 hours of fishing time. Knowing the big bass are biting for some anglers destroys confidence for those others not catching fish and changes today's game plan for many. But these anglers are professionals, and no Bassmaster tournament is over till it's over, until the last cast, till the final weigh-in. More anglers now opt to fish the lower, clearer end of the lake. Many are fishing deep water structure, drop-offs, humps and ledges, favorite cold water areas for West Point bass, areas that can produce, such as yesterday, tremendous catches of bass in short order. Word gets around fast as to these productive areas, like this piece of offshore structure in Maple Creek near the West Point Dam. Bass were holding here in large numbers prior to the tournament. But now, with weather changes and pressure from the anglers fishing spoons and jigs, the bass have developed a case of lockjaw. Many anglers who found good fish in practice are now confessing their luck has turned bad. That luck factor in fishing is often discussed, not only on the Bassmaster tournament trail, but also among recreational anglers all over the country. Many feel there is no luck factor in fishing. Others, like pro Randy Blockett of Missouri, the youngest angler to qualify for the 1986 Bassmasters Classic, feels differently.
Do you feel that luck is a factor, a major factor?
Yes, I really do. Well, for example, in the race for the Classic is with, that's what the profession of being a professional bass fisherman is all about. It's making the Bassmasters Classic, and there's so many guys out there trying to do it. And when you start getting in the last 3 or 4 tournaments, the people that are in the top 50 or the top 100, they're like within one fish away of either making it or not. And an example was at the tournament last year at Chickamauga. At the very last day of the tournament, I was, I think, within 3 pounds of being knocked out of the Classic. And here it is, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't have a keeper in the boat. I'm 3 pounds in the Classic, and I know that I've got to catch probably anywhere from 3 to 5 pounds to make it. And I was looking over the map. I had no idea what to do. I was just really frustrated, and I was looking at the map, and I saw this hump out in the middle of the lake, and I pulled up on it, and by good fortune, I caught 4 keepers there in about 10 minutes. And this was, I had an hour and a half to fish. If I hadn't have caught those fish, I wouldn't have made the Classic, and it really would have hurt my career a lot.
Back up the lake in Beezy Creek is where Mike Johnson, Randy Behringer, and Johnson's first day partner, Orlando Wilson, caught their tremendous strings of bass yesterday. And Mike and Randy are back trying the hot spot again today. What they're fishing is a drop-off on the front side of an old flooded roadbed. They're using 1-ounce structure spoons, vertically jigging them off the bottom to imitate the shad that are schooled up here, the bait fish that attract the bass to this one particular hot spot. Going into this second day, Mike Johnson, the rookie pro from Alabama, has an 8.5-pound advantage over Texan Randy Behringer, a regular on the Bass Anglers Sportsman Society's tournament trail. The Texas veteran weighed in 6 keepers yesterday, 1 shy of the daily tournament limit. But he didn't boat a bass here till 1 p.m. Today, he hopes his prayers are answered sooner. It'll be a soul-searching day for tournament leader Mike Johnson, who comes to the check-in dock with only 1 bass.
I guess cold weather just shut them down. Like fish was still there, we just couldn't get them to hit. Seemed like everybody had that problem today. I'm proud to have this one.
As the second day weigh-in progresses, Randy Behringer, with 3 fish weighing 10 pounds 3 ounces, narrows the gap. Johnson's 1 bass weighs less than 2.5 pounds. This closes the distance between the leader and Behringer to only 9 ounces. And the tension tightens as a new contender makes his bid. Larry King of Macon, Georgia, comes to the scales with one of only 2 7-fish limits caught today.
Next gentleman up is Mr. Larry King of Georgia with a load, the only limit of the day. Larry?
One more right behind me.
Another limit?
Thank you, Larry.
All right, now what did you have yesterday?
I can't remember, 13, 15.
Look out now, boy. We could have a real shootout here. You didn't have no limit yesterday, did you?
No, I only had 3. My partner had a limit yesterday.
All right. Your fish, as I remember. All right, weight today.
18 pounds and 11 ounces.
18 pounds, 11 ounces. Let's give him a good hand. The biggest catch of the day in the limit. Congratulations to you.
Thank you, Ray.
Can you tell us, I won't ask you where, but can you tell us what kind of lure you use? Spinnerbait, spoon, or a diving bait?
I think my partner will back me up. We caught almost 6 different baits, believe it or not. We had to constantly change up. We'd catch 2 or 3 fish on one bait, and then that'd be it, and then we'd change up. Right at the end of the day, I better not say what we caught the last few fish on. If we hadn't have changed baits at the end of the day, though, we would have been struggling. We did catch several real quick at the end of close to the end of the day on a different bait.
But not all West Point contestants fare as well today, like young Bassmaster Randy Blockett of Missouri.
Hey, tomorrow's the last day in the tournament. I haven't done well as like a lot of the people in the field are, and I've got to gamble. I've got to go for that 30-pound string. This is one lake where you can go out and catch 30 pounds in one day. So tomorrow I'm going to gear my tactics to catching school fish. That is big fish that are deep and they're moving up into that shallow water occasionally. I'm going to go out and I'm going to fish 20 to 30 feet deep, and hopefully I can get one of those 30-pound stringers that live here or bigger. They catch 40, 50-pound stringers here for 7 fish in the throughout the year. So I'm going to go out and fish deep. I'll either have a big string or none at all. And that's the way I've got to do it because of the position I'm in.
Stay tuned as the last day's competition for $137,500 in the Georgia Invitational gets tighter and tighter. The Bassmasters will be right back. The final day of the Georgia Invitational, and the last chance for these Bassmasters to catch the bass that will earn them a paycheck and valuable qualifying points for the Bassmasters Classic, the World Championship of Professional Bass Angling. The morning is dark and damp. The forecast calls for light rain, winds shifting to the northwest, falling temperatures, and finally, in the afternoon, clearing skies. As Mike Johnson and Randy Behringer go bow to bow on this section of structure in Vesey Creek, third place contender Larry King is right around the corner, and he's catching bass, a lot of bass. This morning he was only 3 pounds 6 ounces out of first place, and here on West Point, that's only one 16-inch keeper bass. The Georgia angler is fishing in Weehadkee Creek, just a short distance from the 2 leaders. Larry also is fishing structure, a deep, flat underwater point that comes out to a semi-V before it drops off into the deeper timbered water. The lure he wouldn't talk about yesterday at the weigh-in is a Little George, a small lead-bodied bait with a spinner on the rear. Since the place King and his partner are fishing is relatively free of brush and trees, they can crawl the lure on the bottom. And that's what they're doing, inching the bait along the bottom. The bass don't actually strike. Instead, they just stop the lure. The strike is slight and almost undetectable. The clue is that something just feels differently. Back in Vesey Creek, the action is slow. Slow, monotonous fishing that breeds lack of concentration. But this kind of angling, with $32,000 going to the winner, demands that concentration must be kept, that the angler must be as sharp on the last cast this afternoon as he was on his first presentation this morning. And it all will be decided here at the weigh-in.
Larry King is in third place from Macon, Georgia. I mentioned him a few minutes ago. Had 32 pounds and 10 ounces when he began today. Today he has 4 bass. And we're going to watch his weight very carefully, folks, because this is going to put him, I believe, well, it will, no question, in the lead. Watch the scale now on this side.
Got 10 pounds, 14 ounces.
10 pounds, 13 ounces. 10 pounds, 13 ounces. Let's give a nice hand. So that's it. Now listen, you pulled a pin today. Did you catch those fish all day? Was it, or were they caught just throughout just the last few minutes?
No. I think I told you yesterday we caught some early both days. Today we didn't catch a fish early. We were scrambling like crazy, and we finally, I think, caught 2, maybe a couple hours, or an hour or so after we got there, and then nothing for just the longest time. finally managed to catch 2 more, and as you know, I'm heartbroken because I lost a real good fish. Nothing I could do about it. Just he hung me up in the tree, and you know, that was it. But today we caught. Oh, by the way, that bait that my partner had never thrown before was a little George, and we were
Little George?
Right, that's what we ended up catching the majority of our fish on yesterday, and then I caught 2 of my keepers today on a little George. And
how are you fishing it?
Actually dragging it on the bottom, not pumping it, you know, like you would normally do, but actually dragging it and leaving it in contact with the bottom. And the strike wouldn't actually feel like a strike. It just, you know, just feel mushy all of a sudden, like something wasn't right. And you know, we did awful lot of hook setting, and you know, a couple times there was a fish there.
Good. Well, that's great. That's the story. That's the first time we've had a little George perform like that in tournaments in a long time. Congratulations, Larry. Thank you very much.
But this weigh-in is far from over.
Okay, we'll have a new leader here if he comes in. Now, here is Randy Barringer, who was in second place yesterday. Now, at the moment, we have a King has pulled into the lead. Barringer needs 8 pounds to pull into the lead. And this is going to be close. Watch the scales, folks. Randy Barringer of Texas, Waco, Texas. Watch your scale there, Randy.
10 pounds, 15 ounces.
10 pounds, 15 ounces, the new leader, Randy Barringer. Listen, it ain't over yet. We got another fisherman or 2 coming in. How's it? Are you not pleased with this? You got, yeah, would you mind holding up a couple of these bass? Let's show these fish off, because that's a spotty bass, isn't it? Look at here. Man, look at that spotty bass, folks. Get you a couple of bass out of there. Folks, this is spot. Most of you know this, old fishermen do, but that's a spotty bass. You notice the difference in the shape and the coloration between the ones I've got and the one that Randy has? Man, don't you smile now. You're liable to get on television if you do.
The fat lady's just, she's murmuring right now.
Yeah, I guarantee you. All right, folks. Let's slide those nice and quiet. Congratulations. Randy, you got to sweat for a while. You're not worried, are you? You think you got it bagged?
Oh, no, I definitely don't have it bagged, but I'm not worried. I'm in. I had a good tournament, and I just thank the Lord I caught some fish. I did the best I could, and I hope it holds up, obviously.
I do, too. We wish you well. We'll load in a few minutes.
Stay tuned for the exciting conclusion as the Georgia Invitational 2-day leader comes to the scales. The Bassmasters will be right back. With the minutes ticking away this last afternoon, there is only one angler who can top Randy Barringer, Mike Johnson.
All right, Mike Johnson of Georgia. That has been rough, Michael. Yep. One keeper. Mike, you had you were leading the tournament until this moment.
2 pounds, 6 ounces.
2 pounds, 6 ounces.
I'm just glad to be him next to you.
Well, man, I tell you, that won't get it. One keeper. Now, Barringer, you know, he pulled ahead.
Yeah, I saw him catching his fish. He caught him and I didn't.
What was he doing different, you reckon?
Oh, we were sitting on the same hole. He caught him and I didn't. That's all there was to it.
What, Lou, you're jigging a spoon?
Yeah, spoon.
How deep water mostly?
25 to 30 foot. He caught him. I lost 2 good fish, but everybody does, you know.
You don't seem to be terribly worried about it. I tell you, you'd be a great dynamite handler.
Did my 10-3 hold up? That's what I was.
Your 10-3, he's asked me, he said, did my 10-3 hold up? You know, he caught the biggest bass that first day, and I have good news and bad news. Your 10-3 held up until right now. But the bad news, it ain't over yet.
I know.
But I would almost bet my cowboy hat that will hold out. You're going to take home a minimum of a fully rigged Ranger, unless somebody beats that other one, that 10-pounder. And you ought to be happy. Congratulations. Give him a good hand, folks. Great sport.
And the champion, Randy Barringer of Texas.
Winning his second national tournament with us. He's a steady Eddie on the trail and a great friend of everybody in the tournament. Always got a good word for everybody. And a man who's highly serious about bass. We all respect him and love him. From Waco, Texas, Randy Behringer. Let's give him a nice hand.
Most of all, I want to thank a man that I know real well. Has really helped me a whole lot in my fishing lately. I've struggled the last 3 or 4 years. I've really worked hard in my business. Haven't gotten to fish very much at all except BASS tournaments. And this guy is real close to me. Is Jesus Christ. And he really answered my prayers in this tournament. And I just praise the Lord for this victory. And I really thank him for answering my prayers. I did a lot of serious praying today. And one of the great things about BASS fishing is the folks you get to meet, and your friendship from all you men mean a lot more to me than the money, and I need the money. But bless every one of you. I hope all of you have a safe trip home, and we all have our day. We'll all hang in there. Thank you very much.
How Randy Behringer found these bass and the way he caught them is the rest of the story in his $32,000 win here at the Bassmaster Georgia Invitational.
Okay, initially, my pattern on this particular tournament, I was fishing a road bed. The top of the road was 20 feet deep. And on the lake side of the road, the deep side of the road, it'd break on down into about 44, 45 feet of water. The timber line started growing about 35 feet where the trees started growing. You can see these real black marks on my graph. Those trees were in 35 feet of water. When the fish were real active, they'd be up high, but they never did get there during the tournament. And consequently, I moved out and found the big schools of shad, which are these big gray line blobs on the graph right here and right here. And you can see all these shad, and they're over trees. And those shad are about 20 feet deep, and the bottom's about 35 feet deep. And I simply jigged a man of lures and one of Jack Chancellor's jigging spoons on these fish, and was able to catch enough fish to win the tournament. Right over here, you can see a large school of bass that I dropped a buoy on the second day of the tournament and was fortunate enough to catch about 4 or 5 bass real quick. And I think the fish were real spooky in this tournament and real difficult to catch, probably primarily because of both the weather conditions and there's lost a lot of traffic. A lot of people fishing the area, and the fish are just real spooky. In this particular lake, the fish are known to be real spooky. So I didn't run my troll motor, just ran it when I had to, and I didn't even run my front flasher because I was aware of the fact that I thought it could spook the fish. So anyway, just remember the good breaks to fish in your fishing. Look for shad. That's the major primary forage of black bass. And if you can't see bass, especially like in these heavy trees, concentrate on trying to find the food, because normally the bass are just like you and I. They'll stay by the dinner table. So maybe this will help all of our fishing in the future.
And one young Bassmaster here shows the kind of attitude to be a champion on down the line.
Well, basically in this tournament, I went out trying to catch between 30 to 50 pounds of fish. And the way I did that, I was fishing deep. I was fishing isolated cover deep, which traditionally you either go out and you catch none or a bunch. And in this case, it didn't work out. But the sport of tournament angling, especially on the BASS circuit, you're constantly dealing with failure. That's the #1 rule that we live by. But also this makes us more competitive in the future. You go out, you fail one day, you go out the next day, and you catch a good string, and that's what makes you want to keep going back. But and as far as the tournament goes, it could just as easily have went the other way. I watched the first place guy catch the fish from 20 feet away the first day. So if my bait had landed 4 or 5 feet in the right direction, I could have just as easily had 30 pounds the first day. But it didn't go that way, and you just have to go out and give it your best shot, and there will always be another day.
Right now, it's time for the Pros Pointers, the how-to section of the Bassmasters.
You know, a jigging spoon is basically like it's any other bait. This is the jigging spoon I use to catch a lot of my bass on. There's several different ways to work the bait effectively. During this particular tournament, I was just moving my rod tip very gently, just about like so. And this real slow, easy action seemed to be what would trigger the fish to bite. Most of the time, you'll jig a jigging spoon with much more of a whip and much more violent movement. And this is the way most people, including myself, normally work the spoon. But I think these fish, this particular time, were so inactive and spooky and hard to catch that I would work the bait real slow with just slow twitches in my rod tip. And I'll probably raise the bait about a foot or so. And that's about it.
A great tournament and proof that there's more to bass angling than just going fishing. Next week, we'll be with Bassmaster's world champion Charlie Reed at Lake Fork in Texas. We'll go after bass in the grass and learn what it's really like for world champions Charlie and his wife Boga Reed to compete in professional bass fishing. For the Bassmasters, this is Ray Scott, and we'll see you next week.
The Bassmasters has been brought to you by the Heartbeat of America, today's Chevy truck.